If you do Hyrox, you've probably heard people talk about your aerobic system, your aerobic engine, or building your aerobic base. But what actually is your aerobic system? And more importantly, why should you care about it if your goal is to get better at Hyrox? So this is going to be the first video in a mini series where we're going to break down aerobic adaptations and what actually changes in your body when you train for endurance. So I am going to keep this as simple as possible. You don't need a degree in exercise physiology to understand this. You just need to understand what's happening inside your body and why it matters for your training. So let's start with the absolute basics. Your muscles need energy. Every time your muscles contract, they need energy. And that energy comes from a molecule called ATP. Now, think of ATP as the form of energy your muscles can actually use. The problem is that you don't have a huge amount of ATP stored in your muscles. So your body's constantly breaking it down and then rebuilding it. And it has different ways of doing that. So you've got your phosphocreatine system, which can regenerate ATP extremely quickly, but only for a short period. You've got anaerobic glycolysis, which can produce ATP quickly using carbohydrates. And then you've got your aerobic system, which uses oxygen to help produce ATP. And that's what we're interested in today. So what actually is aerobic metabolism? Aerobic simply means using oxygen, and this is where the process gets really interesting. So you breathe in oxygen through your lungs, the oxygen then moves into your bloodstream, your heart pumps that oxygen-rich blood around your body towards your working muscles, and at the same time your blood is also transporting fuel that your muscles can use, mainly glucose from carbohydrates and fatty acids from fat. Once that oxygen fuel reaches the muscle, they can be used by the mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are structures inside your muscle cells that are responsible for producing a lot of your aerobic energy. So you can think of them as like little energy producing factories. They take the fuel you've got available and using oxygen produce ATP, and that ATP can then be used by the muscles to contract. So that in a nutshell is essentially aerobic metabolism. Now, you don't need to remember all the individual chemical reactions to understand the basic concept. What matters is understanding the process. You need fuel, you need oxygen, your mitochondria use them to produce ATP, and ATP allows your muscles to keep working. Now, we briefly touched on it there, but where does the oxygen come from? So this is where I want you to think about aerobic fitness as a whole system, which starts with your lungs. So your lungs get oxygen from the air and transfer it into your blood. Your heart then pumps that oxygen-rich blood around your body. Your blood vessels deliver it towards the working muscles, and then your muscles extract that oxygen and get it into the cells where the mitochondria can use it. And this is really important because your aerobic fitness isn't just about your lungs. It's the entire system working together. Your lungs have to get the oxygen into the blood, your heart has to pump the blood, your blood vessels have to deliver it, and your muscles have to be able to use it. If you improve different parts of the system, you improve your ability to produce energy aerobically. So why is the aerobic system so important? So the big advantage of the aerobic system is its capacity. It's slower than your other energy systems, but it can keep producing ATP for a very long time. So think about the difference between sprinting and running a 10K. If I was to ask you to sprint as hard as possible for a few seconds, your body needs to produce energy incredibly quickly. That's where those faster energy systems become important. But if you're running for 40 or 50 minutes, you can't keep producing energy at the same rate. You need a system that continuously produces energy for a long period. And that's where your aerobic system comes in. And that's why it's so important for endurance. But it's also why it's so important for Hyrox, because Hyrox is heavily aerobic. So it looks like a high intensity sport. You've got sled pushes, sled pulls, burpee broad jumps, rowing, farmers carries, sandbag lunges, wall balls. And you're working extremely hard. So it's easy to think, oh, I just need to get really good at high intensity training. But there's a problem with that. You're also running 8K and you're repeatedly moving between running and hard stations for a fairly long period of time. So that although the intensity is high, you're relying heavily on your aerobic system throughout the race. And this is the part I really want you to understand. Your aerobic system isn't just helping you run. It's also helping you recover between the hard efforts. So you finish your sled push, your breathing's high, your legs are loaded, and then you have to run again. Your ability to produce energy aerobically helps you deal with that fatigue and get back to producing energy efficiently. Then you hit another station, then you run again, and you repeat the process for the entire race. So what actually changes when you improve or train your aerobic system? So this is where we start getting into aerobic adaptations. When you consistently train your endurance, your body has a reason to adapt, and those adaptations happen in different places. So your heart can become better at pumping blood. So one important adaptation is an increase in stroke volume, which is simply the amount of blood your heart pumps with each beat. So obviously if your heart can pump more blood with each beat, it doesn't need to beat as frequently to deliver the same amount of blood during a given workload. So you might be able to run at the same pace with a lower heart rate, and then when you really need to push hard, having a higher stroke volume also gives you greater potential to pump blood at high intensities. So you're improving the delivery system. But that's only half of the story, because your muscles adapt too. So with consistent endurance training, you can develop more mitochondria and better functioning mitochondria. So remember what the mitochondria are doing. They're helping you produce ATP aerobically. So having greater mitochondrial capacity means your muscles have a greater ability to use oxygen and produce energy aerobically. So you can also develop more capillaries around the muscles as well. So these are those tiny blood vessels where oxygen can move from the blood towards the muscles. So now you've got a heart that's better at pumping blood, more blood vessels helping deliver oxygen, and muscles that are better at taking that oxygen and using it. That's what we're talking about when we say your aerobic system becomes better developed. So what does that actually mean for performance? So let's look at this from a practical standpoint. Imagine two athletes running at the same pace. For athlete A, that pace is relatively comfortable. Their cardiovascular system is delivering oxygen effectively, their muscles are good at using it, and their mitochondria can produce a large proportion of the energy they need aerobically. For athlete B, that same pace is much harder. They're having to rely more heavily on those faster energy systems. So fatigue builds up faster, and the goal of aerobic training is in part to move that line. To make a faster pace require less relative effort. For Hyrox, that becomes really important because you're not trying to perform one hard effort. You're trying to perform run, station, station over and over again. So the better your aerobic system is, the better equipped you are to sustain that work and recover between the harder efforts. So the question then becomes, how do you improve that? So this is where the training comes in. And this is where I think athletes often make things more complicated than they need to be. You don't need to build your aerobic system by making every session hard. You build it by consistently giving your body a reason to adapt. Now, that can include easy aerobic work, longer runs, threshold training, higher intensity aerobic intervals. Different types of training create different adaptations, and we'll get into those in more detail throughout this series. But the key principle is train, recover, adapt, repeat. The goal isn't simply to make yourself tired. The goal is to create the right stimulus that tells your body, I need to get better at doing this. Then you recover and give it that same stimulus again, and then over time, your cardiovascular system and your muscles become better equipped to produce energy aerobically. So essentially, the big takeaway from all this is that, or if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this: your aerobic system is a whole body system that allows you to produce energy using oxygen. It starts with your lungs getting oxygen into your blood. Your heart and blood vessels deliver that oxygen to your muscles extract and use it, and your mitochondria use oxygen and fuel to produce ATP. And then with the consistent endurance training, your body adapts. Your heart becomes better at pumping blood. Your muscles develop greater mitochondrial capacity, and you develop more capillaries, and your ability to deliver and use oxygen improves. So for a Hyrox athlete, that means you're better equipped to run at a faster pace, produce more energy aerobically, sustain hard efforts, and recover between stations. So when you're thinking about improving your Hyrox performance, don't just ask, how can I get better at the stations? Ask, how can I build an aerobic system that allows me to repeatedly perform those stations without my running and overall performance falling apart? So that's where your aerobic engine becomes a huge performance advantage. And as I said, this is just the first in a mini series of videos that we're going to be doing. So this is just the beginning. In the next video, we're going to look at VO2 max and what it actually means, what determines it, why stroke volume matters, and why having a high VO2 max doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a great Hyrox athlete, because there's a lot more to endurance performance than simply having a big VO2 max. So if you want to understand the physiology behind better Hyrox performance, that's where we're going next.